Hello students, welcome to the class on models of growth. The objectives of this session are 1. To understand the meaning and importance of the models of growth in the Indian economy. 2. To understand in detail the different models and their contribution to India's growth and development agenda. 3. To critically analyze the different models used in Indian economy. 4. To apply the understanding to the current economic scenario in the country. Introduction. After independence, India adopted the planning process as its instrument of development and growth. The objectives of economic planning were based on the directive principles laid down by our constitution. The basic objectives of India's 5-year plans based on these objectives were 1. Rapid economic growth and of employment. 2. Reduction of differences in income and wealth. 3. Prevention of concentration of economic power. 4. Creation of values and attitudes of a free and equal society. To achieve these objectives, the planners formulated a strategy of planned economic development. For this purpose, India implemented certain models of growth. They are 1. The Nehru-Mahalanobis model of growth. The Nehru-Mahalanobis model of development was the driving force behind the growth strategy adopted by India from the second 5-year plan. In fact, it was only during the second plan that a clear expression of strategy of development emerged. The architect of the second plan, Professor P.C. Mahalanobis, supported by Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of independent India, developed this model of growth based on the Russian experience. The strategy of this model emphasized on investment in heavy industry to achieve industrialization, which was considered to be the basic condition for rapid economic development. Prime Minister Nehru was very clear in pointing out that industrialization meant development of heavy industries. The fundamental strategy adopted by Indian planners for the second plan and with minor modification for 3 plans up to the 5th plan was rapid industrialization through large investment on heavy, basic and machine building industries. Nehru-Mahalanobis model was based on long-term strategy, which gives greater importance to the long-term goals of development rather than focus on the short-term goals. Let us discuss some of the main points on which this strategy focused. A high rate of saving so as to boost investment to a higher level. B. A heavy industry bias to develop the industrial base of the economy. C. Adoption of protection policy to safeguard infant industry. D. Encouragement of import substitution to achieve self-reliance. E. More opportunities for the less privileged sections of the society. Thus, the true objective of the Nehru-Mahalanobis model was growth with social justice. At that time, in the 50s, it was felt that market mechanism could not bring about just allocation of resources to meet this objective of growth with social justice. Therefore, a greater role was allotted to the state. In this model, the state controlled the economy through the public sector. The main role of the state was development of social infrastructure through the public sector. 1. Enlargement of irrigation, power, transportation and communication. 2. Expansion of markets. 3. Remove constraint in the form of power on industrial development and irrigation for agricultural development. 4. Development of skilled manpower to provide skilled human resource for the new industrial sector. 5. Nationalization of major banks to channelize investments into socially desired lines of production. The achievements of this model were: 1. Rate of savings increased from 7% of GDP in 1950-51 to a high level of around 24%. 2. The foreign investment flow was only 1.5% and the process of development was financed largely by domestic investment. 3. The development of the industrial sector of the economy in the form of heavy industries and infrastructure. 4. Human resource development by training a large pool of scientific and technical manpower. The development strategy, with its emphasis on heavy industries, proved to be a great success in the initial phase of planned development. During the third plan period, however, the development process ran into serious difficulties. The process of agricultural growth had slowed down. Another problem which the country faced was large trade deficits. The net saving rate, instead of rising further, slumped down, and as a result, on an average, around 25% of the investment had to be financed by foreign aid. During the second half of the 1960s, since the excess demand generated through a high rate of public investment could not be matched with the supply of food grains and other consumer goods, an inflationary situation developed and the general price level rose at a rate of about 8.6% per annum. The faith in the development strategy as defined in the Mahalanobis model was shaken and a plan holiday was declared for 3 years. This model has been criticized on the following grounds. 1. While massive investments were made in the public sector enterprises, no serious effort was made to run them on commercial lines. The social motive was used as a reason for the continued losses faced by this sector. This put a heavy burden on the exchequer. 2. There was massive administrative failure in these enterprises because of some reasons. A. Collusion between the bureaucrats and politicians. B. Failure to develop work ethic amongst the employees. C. Large cuts in electricity charges and fertilizer prices or subsidies, and to appease certain lobbies like big farmers, urban consumers. 3. This model failed to provide national minimum level of living despite 5 plans, and nearly 40% of the population lived below the poverty line with increased inequalities of income and wealth. The Gandhian model of growth. The drawbacks of the Nehru-Mahalanobis model were the main reason for the adoption of Gandhian socialism as the main objective of development by the Janata Party's 6th plan 1978 to 83. This plan was broadly based on the Gandhian model of economic growth. The basic objective of this plan is to raise the material as well as the cultural level of the Indian masses so as to provide a basic standard of life. The main goals are: 1. Improving the economic condition of 5.5 lakh villages of India. 2. Scientific development of agriculture. 3. Rapid growth of cottage industries. The Gandhian model aims to achieve the above objectives through focusing on sectors like agriculture, cottage and village industries and basic industries. Agriculture. Reform of this sector is the main goal of this model. The primary objective is to create self-sufficiency in food. To achieve this, the larger goals are better and larger inputs and land reforms in the sector. The Gandhian model gives special importance to dairy farming as an occupation and as an allied activity to agriculture. Cottage and village industries. To achieve its primary aim of maximum self-sufficiency in village communities, the model stresses the importance of rehabilitation, development and expansion of village industries along with agriculture. The plan outlines a scheme to make each village self-sufficient in cloth through manufacture of khadi and at the same time wants the state to consider revival and expansion of cottage industries as the main plank of industrial planning. The model wants the villages to be more than just suppliers of raw materials. Basic industries. The basic misunderstanding regarding the Gandhian model is that it is against industrial development. In fact, the model recognizes the importance of certain select and basic key industries for the overall growth of the economy. For example, defense industry, hydroelectric and thermal power generation, mining and metallurgy, machinery and machine tools, heavy engineering and heavy chemicals. The assumption that the model is against industrial development is false, but it believes that machinery is good when it operates in the interest of all without the exploitation of the labour force. Based on the above points, the Gandhian model of growth suggests some changes in the planning system. 1. Employment oriented planning to replace the production oriented planning, which emphasizes on creating more employment with higher productivity. This will not cause a reduction in production as per the model. 2. Focusing on the agricultural sector as a potential for employment creation. 3. Favoring and promoting small industries like village and cottage industries instead of large scale industries. 4. Creating a more equitable distribution of economic wealth through decentralization into small scale units, village economy promotion and self-sufficient villages. Thus, the Gandhian model hoped to achieve a good standard of living for all, removal of concentration of wealth and income and growth with stability within the shortest possible time. Let us now move to the reconciliation of the Nehru and Gandhian models. Nehru wanted to give more importance to heavy industries, while Gandhi believed agriculture and cottage industries should be the main focus of the growth story of India. Nehru-Mahalanobis model was perhaps the only suitable growth model for the problems facing India during the 50s and the 60s. Small scale industries play a very important role, but heavy industries are crucial, especially for creating wealth and for the defense manufacturing in the economy. The fundamental objective of both these models was achieving sustainable growth rate for the country and equitable distribution of its wealth. As such, it would be wrong to consider one model better than the other. Both have salient points and drawbacks. Instead of focusing on the drawbacks, much can be achieved by taking lessons from them and using their salient features for present economic problems. The third model of growth is liberalization, privatization and globalization, LPG Model of Development. The LPG Model of Development was introduced in 1991 by the then Finance Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh. This model was considered to be a key instrument in the financial reforms agenda adopted by India in 1991. It intended to charter a new growth strategy with emphasis on liberalization, globalization and privatization. The LPG model foresaw a greater role for the private sector in the economy. It hoped for a higher inflow of foreign direct investment or FDI to support our growth process. The model favored a strategy of export-led growth ELG instead of import substitution. It assumes that trade is an engine of growth, implying that the performance on the export front will determine the overall growth performance of the economy. However, the export performance to a great extent depends upon the external economic environment. The model aims at reducing the role of the state and a more liberal market-driven pattern of growth. Some of the salient features of the LPG model are: 1. The areas reserved for the public sector in the economy were opened for the private sector. The government started disinvestment in public sector undertakings or PSUs, and the proceeds were used to reduce fiscal deficit. 2. Setting up of industries was made easier for the private sector by reducing the red tapeism and liberalization of licenses. 3. The government freed the business houses without any ceilings prescribed by the MRTP Commission. 4. To promote foreign direct investment, the government decided to allow up to 51% FDI in high priority areas with prior permission from the government. 5. Formulation of revival and rehabilitation schemes was undertaken for chronically sick public sector enterprises. 6. Greater autonomy was granted to public sector enterprises with the intention of increasing their efficiency and productivity. 7. The country was opened up to other countries for promoting more exports as part of globalization. The critics of the model have pointed out certain limitations of the model. They are: 1. The model has very narrow focus, catering to the corporate sector, which accounts for only 10% of the GDP. 2. It overlooks the special need of agriculture and allied sector of the economy, which supports a large population of the country. 3. The model does not give a concrete policy for the development of infrastructure, financial and economic support. 4. Permitting free entry of multinational corporations, the model has created problems for small and medium sector units. 5. The government has opened the window for foreign trade too wide, offsetting the rising exports by rising imports, which can lead to a larger trade gap. 6. The model focuses on capital intensive production, which casts serious apprehension about its applicability to a labour abundant country like India. The most recent model of growth is PURA, a neo-Gandhian approach to development. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, the President of India, has been advocating providing urban amenities in rural areas, PURA model, which he has outlined in his Vision 2020. He outlined the strategy and the concept of PURA in his address to the Food Security Summit on 5th February 2004. According to him, for India to achieve the status of a developed nation would require a growth rate of 10% sustained over several years. To achieve this, a roadmap targeting the 5 areas needs to be followed. 1. agriculture and food processing with a target of 360 million tons of food and agricultural production by 2020. 2. Reliable and quality electric power for all parts of the country. 3. Education and health care for all. 4. Expansion of information and communication technology to rural parts of India to promote education and create national wealth. 5. Development of strategic sectors, nuclear technology, space technology and defense technology. The salient features of the PURA model are: PURA draws its inspiration from the Gandhian model, but because of its method of application, it is a neo-Gandhian model in the sense that it integrates the goal of rural development via the provision of modern technology and amenities to the rural areas. The model involves 4 connectivities, which are physical, electronic, knowledge and economic. The key objective mentioned above will be fulfilled through this connectivity are: A. Under physical connectivity, a group of 15 to 25 villages will be linked together to each other by road, ring road with provisions for transportation and electricity facilities between them. B. Digital or electronic connectivity aims to link villages with modern telecommunications and technology services. For example, public call offices, cyber cafes, etc. C. Knowledge connectivity through provisions for schools and higher education centers, hospitals, etc. every 5 to 7 kilometers with ring roads connecting them. And D. Economic connectivity with a goal to provide good marketing facilities to the producers and buyers within the village itself. The model is further elaborated into 3 different categories: Type A, Type B and Type C, depending upon the region and the condition of the current development. Type A cluster situated closer to an urban area having minimal road connectivity, minimal infrastructure and limited support, education and health. Type B cluster close to urban area but with sparse infrastructure and no basic amenities. Type C cluster located in very interior areas with no connectivity and no basic amenities. The PURA model of growth is also prone to criticism. On 24th February 2012, the restructured PURA scheme was launched that combines rural infrastructure development with economic regeneration in private-public partnership or PPP model and seeks to harness the efficiencies of the private sector. It was claimed that while the PURA launched by Kalam has failed, the reworked PURA will succeed. The optimism stems out of the fact that the success of the new PURA lies in the difference in the objectives. Hence, the focus is on water supply, sanitation, physical infrastructure rather than knowledge connectivity. The 11th plan has provided Rs 248 crores for the implementation of PURA, but this sum is very inadequate if compared to the types and quantity of objectives set by the PURA model. Conclusions. Students, we can now conclude that with globalization, the Indian economy is exposed to the fluctuations in other countries. Expansion of employment opportunities and augmentation of productivity and income levels of both the underemployed and employed poor should be the main instruments of poverty alleviation. Thank you.